I looked up and I saw an ad for soccer. I'm like, this is anathema. What is this nonsense? Charity cup. I forget. I remember it was like kind of like an ad. It was visual and it was beautiful. And I got stunned and I was like, wow, I'm gonna check this out. What do you mean you guys it's too late? What do you mean I missed the deadline? Just get me in there, find a way. And I got a stern no from one of the Dans, and oh come on, let's let him do it from the other Dan. Some people may know which one's which, but I'm not gonna say it. My dad comes to me one day, he goes, get out. He's never done this in my life ever in 51 years. Then or after that. What do you mean get out? He's like, get out of the shop. And I go, Dad, what are you talking about? He goes, you have a degree in chemistry and you're working cars with me. You're wasting your life. What's the point of serving our great God and doing things and doing it like you're marking off a calendar or marking off a to-do list? That's like the most wretched way of doing life. I wanted people to have like a standalone worship team in every church. That was one of our goals, to like create songs, write songs, record. Like we saw the possibilities and we wanted to be the trendsetters no matter how hard that was, you know? We did the prayers in small groups. You would share your needs and within the group you'd pray one at a time. But one at a time meant like 50 groups and there's 50 people praying at a time. So it was very efficient. Bora, we have a little bit of engineering. We want it to be efficient, you know? All at once is the most efficient way to do it, but you know, it's kind of chaotic. If life only counts in the moments that you're at church or only the moments you're on the mission field or only the moments when you're talking about God, what a wasted opportunity, because life should count at every moment, right? But, any invitation to me is a side quest, and those are the spicy things that make, you know, the main dish excellent, you know? So the answer is yes, we just have to work it out.
I believe in Sacramento was more of a youth conference, or it was just a
Yes.
random event.
No, it was a youth conference. The conference was planned, but the outing at the park was just random. Everybody just
Okay.
went to the park to hang out and have you know, a good time meeting people, playing soccer, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then in California it was supposed to be like the youth conference in California in sort of the Orange County area now, or you just said, "Hey,
Yeah.
let's just do this conference which is not necessarily related to the youth conference." I
Yeah,
guess I'm
let's
trying to
just do a
understand.
conference. Yeah, let's just do a conference. Ours
Okay.
blended the Baptists and the Pentecostals
Okay.
because in the meantime, I went to my first camp ever, and it was a Baptist camp out in
Mm-hmm.
LA, and I met some great people. So I'm like, man, how come the Baptists are not our friends? You know, how come I never see them anywhere? They don't see me. So I ended up going to their churches and recruiting. And ultimately, during that year of preparation, God introduced me to many great people from the Baptist camp, Baptist denomination. And so when we organized, it would make no sense to do it with the Pentecostals. That was like
Hmm.
not anything that I wanted. I wanted everybody from every church. I don't care if small, large, or different denomination. It was evangelical get together, you know?
I'm just
So it was
curious.
not meant to be an extension of the first youth event we went to. It was something
So,
different.
so I don't know if I ever talked to you like sort of about these details. I think overall I talked the big picture, but so you're saying you went to a camp. Do you know what camp and who organized it, or
It was
what's
definitely the I was invited. There was only 5 of us from the Pentecostals that went, me and 5 of my friends, and it was all Baptists. I don't remember. It was in Los Angeles between 95 and 96, about that time. Yeah.
okay? I'm trying
I
to
can
think.
find out more details, but I don't know more details.
Because back in the day, I mean, it was probably an RBY as they call it camp, I'm
I believe
assuming.
so. Yeah, I
And I'm
believe
trying to
so.
remember who would have been president because that's how the things were organized back. The president, there'd be East Coast, West Coast, and I'm just curious
Yeah.
because I ended up organizing some of those camps later on, but I think this was more in the 2000s. So that's why I'm trying to see if maybe we met there but not even knew it. But anyway, that's cool. So you went to this conference, said, "Hey, there's a lot of great people here. Why aren't they able to come to sort of the
That's right.
Pentecostal events?" Is that?
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
exactly it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. This brings back memories because I feel like that was my sentiment when I was involved with the RBYA. I was actually the president for a while. RBYA means Romanian Youth Baptist Association. I was remember we were putting out these events, and I was wondering, well, why can't we invite other youth like from the Pentecostal community or whatever? Why does it have to be? And that was the feeling. Now, I don't want to dive deep into that story, but anyway, a similar sort of thought. Like, who cares? They're young people. They want to learn. Who cares what denomination they're from? So that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, so okay, and then sort of what happened after that? So you guys did this
Oh yeah.
conference. You got these people sort
We
of.
well, I got the young people to to get together. They agreed to work together. We agreed to do songs, have a worship team, and so on. And so, ironically, the churches that opened up and allowed us to practice was Bethel Baptist, where Daniel Bronze's pastor. We practiced there, but I didn't know Daniel was a pastor or who he was. I heard of him, but didn't know him. We practiced at his church. Their church was open. We practiced at, we worked with the Pentecostals, but it was mostly the Baptists that were opening up. The
Mm,
university we rented was Cal Baptist University because of my friend, the pastor that was mentoring me, Liviu. He
mm,
had connections. So we got the whole university, including the dorms. People could sleep there overnight, and they came from all over the West Coast. It was beautiful. And we got the whole campus to ourselves. It was the middle of summer, no students. So
mm,
we had a beautiful event. Now I also reached out to a lot of pastors because that was my duty, the Baptists and Pentecostals, and I'd be surprised, or you may be surprised to know that in equal measure, they had doubts and they had their reservations, but in equal measure, I got turned down from the Pentecostal more than the Baptist. I didn't know many Baptists, but the ones I invited came. Well, actually, it was Brother Levy that invited him, but they came. And it was my first interaction with some of my people I looked up to, some of the local Pentecostals that I looked up to that were either A, didn't participate because they were just skeptical, or B, if they did participate, they were reserved. And then afterwards they had questions. And I was like, man, like, I don't know. It felt to me like we're back in communists, where you have to get approval to do anything good, or anything of value. And I hate to say it that way, but it was the mentality not only crept in, but the mentality was part of who we are, right? You have to get approval to do anything of, and there's suspicion and there's more
mm,
doubts and more questions. There's, freedom wasn't a thing. Anyways, long story short, I did have some beautiful, amazing Pentecostal pastors that believed in us and they gave us full credit, and Baptist pastors. And those are the people that, were the wind in our sails. And as soon as we got that, our first event down, then we realized we're an entity. So we met afterwards, like, okay, now we got to do something. So we became a band to do our own songs, and we set conferences, and we invited some of the pastors that didn't come. We were kind of becoming a thing, and we had a plan and an assembly of, or excuse me, an assembly of people that would meet every week to continue the plan. But it started out of, again, out of just an idea, and ended up being an organized group for about 10 years.
yeah, yeah, and I did have a conversation with John, who later on has becomes part of this, and so the cat. So that's why I wanted to ask you. The initial group that you organized with it, is it people that sort of I know today, or sort of the
Yeah.
people that eventually became like integral parts, or was it
You
sort of a
know all
different
of
audience?
them, yeah.
Okay,
You know all of them, but not all of them that are in Charity Cup were in Mission One at the beginning.
okay,
A few were, but not all of them. But
hmm
you know all the people that were there at the beginning, because it's the same people that were, movers and shakers back then are the people that are constant and devout now. So you've met all these people at some point.
okay.
Yeah,
So at first it was basically getting together to organize sort of a conference with the idea of bringing youth. And my next
that's right.
question is, and I guess this probably answers it, why was it called Mission One? Who came up with the name? And well, yeah.
Yeah. There's Brother Levy was the main pastor, and he had a youth pastor, Cornel Burga, and I would go in their office a lot, which was kind of unique because our church didn't have an office. But in their office at the Colton Church, I would go and they have books and we talk and discuss. And these men really shaped me. And I believe it was Levy that came up with Mission One. At the time, I had no affiliation to anything. I was like, cool, that sounds good. So we'll just Mission One. But he came up with the idea. For a few years, he was our mentor. Through me, he mentored others, but he also mentored others. He looked to me as an equal, but I looked to him as a mentor. It's kind of interesting. He took me under his wing, and I became his friend.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of interaction with him as a friend, which really helped set the tone for how I interact with people for the rest of my life. It was him and my uncle John. Both of them were very young, dynamic, and both were people, like 100%. So I got the Pentecostal and the Baptist. I would say the best, unofficially the best people, leaders or leaders of people that I've ever worked with.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
all in the
So
same city. Yeah,
Okay, but you're saying it all started with this circle in Sacramento. You're saying,
For sure.
and
Yeah,
I
random
did
circle. Yeah.
I guess I never connected those dots. You may have mentioned it, but now full circle. No pun
Yeah,
intended.
they could. Yeah, of course, they continued to do the youth conferences, by the way,
Yeah,
and we at Mission One did our thing, by the way. And about the year 2001, I believe they asked us to join them, and we did, and that's a history in itself. But we're about 5 years. We're very independent, and not independent, but it was we said it at different times. We're not in competition. We're complementary, if that makes sense. We had things that the youth conference did not have or could not have. We were more of a workshop slash uh, session to come, and it was very much a work weekend, where you would come and it was different. It was different than
yeah,
the youth conferences.
yeah, and I think that's a very good point because I got some of this insight, obviously. So you guys are focused on sort of not just getting together and having fellowship, but you wanted to kind of grow people that are going to
Yeah,
come to
we wanted
these.
to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was focused a lot more on the word of God and on seminars and on topics that are interesting. And obviously that's from the Baptist side more than the Pentecostal side. And of course we did the worship and we had the beautiful expression and song and in prayer. So we had, some troubled waters to navigate because there were two systems colliding, right? Do we pray all at once? Well, that wasn't allowed or accepted or even
Right.
desired. Do we
Yeah.
pray one by one? That
Right.
wasn't desired or. So we had to blend the two, but that was not a challenge as much as it was. Let me rephrase that. That wasn't like a problem as much as it was a challenge. So we found ways to go around that. We found ways to make it work. Their old Romanian expression is "Oamenii buni în cap." The good people, they fit. We fit together in the same church, and we could do things together. We fit. We did not have issues fitting because we worked uh, so that both sides would be completely, satisfied to whatever
So
degree we could.
how did you navigate that? Because that is an interesting
Oh,
one,
we
and I could
we
see it.
met in groups. We did the prayers in small groups. And within the group, you would share your needs, and within the group, you pray one at a time. But one at a time meant like 50 groups, right? And there's 50 people praying at a time.
Yeah.
So it was very efficient. Bora, we have a little bit of engineering. We want it to be efficient. All at once is the most efficient way to do it, but it's kind of chaotic.
Okay. So you guys worked it
Yeah,
out like that, and
yeah,
um, okay, that is very cool. How did you navigate? I'm assuming all kinds of objections, discussions. I don't know about the Holy Spirit, about speaking in tongues, about not speaking in tongues. How did you navigate? Because
yeah.
obviously you're right. There's kind of two different
Oh,
groups colliding.
there was forces pulling on us from every which angle, including within, I would say, the youth that we would get together and they would try to, get us or ask questions or kind of like trip us up. I guess the whole point was what we have a lot in common, and the love of Christ constrains us or pulls us together. So because the love of Christ pulls us together, we're going to walk in the things that we agree on together. Everything else we can do independently at our churches and our meetings and that's fine. But when we come together, there was common ground, and there was not. I would say each side was represented. I don't know if equal, but each side was very much represented, or was listened to. So we would not, be more Pentecostal or more Baptist. So we try to keep the middle of the line so that whoever shows up can learn and benefit and even stretch, from their experience. Uh, but not to the point where it was an exaggeration or a unique. Only one side was represented. So,
I,
for example, one conference we had after we sang, it was just the presence of God was rich, and we dropped on our knees and we prayed, and it was spontaneous. Nobody batted an eye, though afterwards we're like, what was that? They would ask. And we're like, what was it? I don't know. You were there. You tell me what it was. Everybody that prayed, prayed. And if you don't want to pray, you don't pray. There's no force, there are no assumptions. That was not something we tried to reproduce. There was not something that we tried to, you know, have. We weren't trying to mess with emotions or with people's experiences and tap into that. We're just doing what God taught us. It was more of a fresh, I would say, and a new way of doing things, if that makes sense. I don't know if new is the right word, but maybe a common way of doing things that everybody would feel welcomed and they would feel like if they want to do more, they can on their own, but it wasn't sanctioned or wasn't led from the front. For example, one of the things we did, we realized at the conventions, there's a lot of individual people singing, which is great, by the way. We never had one person. sing individually. It was either a worship team or nobody, because we realized we're doing this for the audience. And individual songs, they may elevate a person, they may, bring some talent out. That's fine, but that wasn't our venue. We just decided on our venue. We wanted to have worship teams, and that's it. And one venue we had 5 worship teams, for example, was an overkill. One, and then we kind of streamlined. We learned as we
Yeah.
went. Other venues we only had one worship team, and so on. But the point was, we're not there to compete one with the other or to show off or to have any more of us on stage. We felt that that was enough in our local bodies. So you can sing in a local church, but when we come together as a conference, we can do the conference things. So it's kind of like a new thing. If I said the new word new, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So George, in this sort of initial group that started, I assume Cat was there, or that was
Yeah,
later
he
on.
was. Yeah, Catalina was there from the beginning.
Okay.
He wasn't on stage from the beginning, but he did a play in the first one. Everybody was asked to do something, and they did. And the people that did something came back and did more. And then we morphed into, the state that we were for many years. But everybody that wanted to participate, they could. And some that were at the first one on stage, musically with the whatever, they decided that was enough for them. They had a good experience. They don't want to do it again. And so we kind of like uh, what's it called? We boiled it down to only a skeleton crew of 8 or 10, and that's how we did the conferences. And then we invited others.
Hmm. And were the Seafair brothers there from the beginning, or
They were, yes, yes,
okay,
from the very beginning.
okay,
But Donnie
John,
was doing sound. John was there from the beginning, but he wasn't in the first worship team.
I see, and I think he told me that story how that all went down. But okay, that's cool. So these are some of the people that obviously I know, but like you said, there are
Yeah,
probably others which I've heard of, but I'm not as intimate with. I don't know if the
yeah.
girls were there from the beginning, or you guys kind of changed. I'm talking about the people in the band.
Yeah. No, the girls were not there from the very beginning. They're part of the organizing team, organizers. But for example, Claudia, I think was like 16 at the time, and then as we moved on, she was older and she became confident and she was great. But initially, we had other girls, and some of them decided they don't want to be with us. Some of them, ironically, we had to face this reality too. There was some questionable behavior in the past we didn't know. So now we're becoming a thing, and we couldn't allow some to be with us because of questionable behavior. Or not in the past, even in the present. I don't know, at the time I think the internet just popped up somewhat chat groups and whatever. And we found out one of our members used an alias name to chat with somebody else online, and we realized that's shady and we don't want this person working with us. So we asked her to step down. And we had to make a decision almost like a church board or a mission board to make sure that we're not compromised morally, even though it was very much a not a great what's it called? We didn't set out to do that. We didn't set out to be, to limit people, but
Yeah,
we couldn't go forward with people that had compromising words about them or experiences. We knew
makes
that we had to
sense.
stay steer clear of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you definitely were dealing with it. Probably, I'm assuming a lot of people are looking at you guys, wanted to have a good testimony, so that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's probably why we worked and it went so far, had an impact.
Ironically, even the lead pastor that was leading us, Livio, within years of he had some divergence within the Baptist community and some issues. So we met with Pastor Brinze and got his wisdom, and met with Brother Levy, and all of a sudden we, the young people, are in sessions that we never thought we would be, where we have 2 pastors or 3 pastors, talking, and eventually the decision was made to cut ties with Levy, which hurt us. At the same time, it was the only thing to do, because and he agreed it was the only thing to do because of something that he and the Baptist church had going on, unrelated to us, but we didn't want that to hinder anything that we were doing. And he agreed, we agreed, everybody agreed. It was beautiful, but it was something we had headaches trying to figure this out. We're like, man, we're now supposed to like work with
Hmm.
with people that are you know that should be mentoring us, but they have some lapses, and we have to deal with that. And as young people, we made decisions that were necessary to go forward. And there's no regrets in that, by the way, from any party.
So George, basically, you started sort of having this carrying a burden, if you would. I know as an early, from an earlier age, which probably I'm assuming kind of began to shape you into becoming more responsible, Because it sounded like you were in these meetings that pretty early on, right? And
Yeah, from the very beginning, if something went wrong or if the play was too loud, like Catiline's play was radical by all means in all denominations. It was, they played heavy metal and they were dancing on the stage and they had a good idea and they had a good tool to attract the young people. But it was very controversial. It wasn't something you ever saw on stage. And he came out with, Metallica and whatever songs they had, blasting. The whole auditorium was like Donnie was the engineer. It was loud. It was in your face. It was raw. And guess who got all the blame? The leaders, organizers, not the participants. So I took one for the team. I took one for Cat before Cat even knew I existed. Because this play was radical and nobody we didn't vet these people. We assumed they're going to do their best, and they did. And we're not ashamed of what they did, but it was not allowed at the time. So we're kind of a few years ahead of the curve, and we received a lot of blame. And most of that was the leader, which was me, and it was a lot of, like you said, a lot of being shaped and being molded and taking the heat for my friends, where I wish they would have done different, but they didn't. And then I'm not going to throw them under the bus. So I had to stand up and even debate with some pastors, man. It was kind of interesting. I wasn't ready for that.
so I bring this up because I think that shapes a young person because all of a sudden you're faced with these decisions, right? Where
Yeah.
you kind of had to either, I don't know, sort of stick up for your friends, or you had to use grace in this situation, or I don't know, sometimes you had to be more severe. But those all very early on begin to shape you, and
Yeah,
you
for
learn
sure.
principles.
Yeah. You
So
also learned that sometimes the powers that be don't like change, and change is going to require somebody to get whipped, or somebody to be like the whipping boy, or somebody to be the one out front being chastised. Um, and that's fine. Ultimately, if you see the long term goal, or if you see that there is a purpose, I don't know if we saw a long term goal, but the long term goal was we wanted the denominations to work together. We wanted the young people to experience something else than just the usual church. We wanted young people to be free to have. I mean, there was like one worship team in all of Southern California at the time. Very few worship teams. We wanted people to have like a standalone worship team in every church. That was one of our goals. We wanted people to create songs, write songs, record. Like we saw the possibilities, and we wanted to be the trendsetters, no matter how hard that was.
yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. Okay. Okay, so that's kind of the early stages of how things started with Mission One, which I'll tell you, back in that time period, I mean, I told you this before. I was very good friends with Lija Lupash, and I believe she started getting involved with sort of charity cup. This is probably before we met, you and I. But I remember she was telling us about this group on the West Coast, and you guys should check them out. And we happen to be family friends with Tifreas, and she mentioned that I believe that the Tifreas were involved in this group. So I'm like, this. I was very intrigued, right? Back then, it wasn't like you just went on Facebook and on their website and check it out. It wasn't quite like
yeah,
that. It was word of mouth
yeah,
and email, probably something like that. So we were looking forward, and I remember when we did finally meet, we met at a church opening in Detroit. You guys are the main guests, if you remember that.
yeah. Bethesda. Yeah,
Bethesda, and I'm assuming Legia had something to do with that because I don't know how Bethesda
for
would have got
sure.
a hold of that. I don't know. You probably know better.
Well, some of the leaders in our team, Oli Apahidan, his Claudia is his sister, Claudio is his brother, and he married into the Lupash family, so it was a direct link. Um, so
But
Oli
I believe that
Apahidan,
was later on, though.
yeah, but I believe it was through them. I don't remember the exact conjuncture. You're right; it could have been later on because I remember they were not married when I knew them.
Yeah, I don't think they were married. I think maybe
Yeah, yeah,
because
you're
you
right.
guys came, and because of the connection,
Yeah,
maybe
you're
even
right.
with
I
Charity
didn't.
Cup. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think early on, I think Legia knew you guys. I don't know how, but I don't believe you guys. No, Cody didn't know. But anyway, anyway, I just remember Legia telling me, and I don't know exactly how you guys got to come to Bethesda at the opening, but I was there too, and I remember you guys were like as each, I would say, sort of for the Romanian standard of things, kind of like, you know, vedette, as I would say, or definitely like, well known, or, we get these, yeah, you had a good reputation preceding you. So people are excited, I think, to have you there. It was something new, something different. Anyway, I don't know how you guys felt, but I remember going like very intrigued to hear you guys sing.
Obviously, we felt honored, and obviously, you're saying about excellence. John was our leader at the time, or many before that even, but he was our leader too. John is a man of excellence. Like he will practice the same song 50 times, and he will do 4 songs and only 4 songs for like 6 months. You're like, John, let's do more songs. No, we got to get these right. They're not right. So he pushed excellence almost to a fault, and almost to the people like me who are more of a more broad than I am, deep. But John is deep, not necessarily broad. Wasn't broad at the time. He wanted certain songs done well, and we repeated those songs ad nauseum. But I realized the wisdom in that because we everything we did was excellent. Like Donnie was the sound engineer. Like you couldn't have a mic feedback. Like you couldn't have microphone feedback. That was like a no-no. It wasn't gonna happen. I mean, he was so precise with the tone, everything was precise. Everything was like a well-oiled machine. So Bethesda and other experiences like Bethesda were easy for us. They're kind of relaxing because we were prepared. We were very prepared, overly prepared. So we just showed up and did the thing that we always do every Saturday. We practiced until we got blue in the face. We had no idea for what we practiced many times. I would ask him, "What are we practicing for again?" The next conference is a year from now, or 7 months from now. And we still met, we still practiced because we just had to practice. So we knew we had to be good for whatever. And then when whatever came, like Bethesda invitation, we were a go because we're ready. We don't have to prepare. We're prepared. So it's kind of a state of preparation every week. It was kind of interesting. And
Yeah.
looking back, there was a lot of wisdom in that. We were never cold. We were always warmed up, if that makes sense. Our voices were always ready and instruments, and we were precise with each other. We've sang so much together that it was second nature and it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another takeaway from the discussion with John, which obviously went into the Mission One history a little bit. But the point is that you guys were consistent and faithful in beginning together every Saturday to practice for what, 10 years, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's a
that's what it
that's
was.
a that's a huge feat. Not easy to do. Things fall apart after a year, let alone 10. So just because people have other interests. So I think that's an amazing thing. But anyway, so you guys came to Bethesda, and I remember the story, and you and I talked about it. But at that point, I was at a smaller church, just similar to you. We had a small church, and I believe a group of people left to be part of another church, and there was nothing. It wasn't like a church breakup or anything. They just say, "Hey, we're gonna go since we're from this town in Canada called Windsor. We're just gonna go and assist that church because it's really small and they could really use more people." And I believe it was more like that, And they kind of our church kind of came to agreement that these guys should go there and we'll assist however we can. So there were friends there, and you might remember Danny Dosescu,
Of course.
who, if he does hear this, I'll salute him. And other families went there, and I believe Donnie was even getting baptized at that small church, if I'm not wrong. And I remember coming up to you guys. The baptism at that church was in between, like I believe at 2 o'clock, and your service had ended at Bethesda at somewhere around 12. So I remember knowing that this baptism would happen. I'm like, how cool would it be? What a big surprise would it be for these young people to come and sort of hear this band, this really cool and hip worship band, come and be at their baptism. Like they would blow their mind. That was really my thought. Yeah, if I could pull this off, I think it'd be amazing. I didn't even talk to them. It was like all supposed to be a surprise. So, but I remember going up to you and saying, "Hey, George, what do you think? Would you guys be open to come to this 2 o'clock service and sing?" But there's a catch. I don't believe they'll allow you guys to sing with instruments. Now, maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but I think that was the politics of the day. instruments were not, drums. So I'm like, could you guys sing a cappella? That was also in my mind a little bit of a test because I'm like, I want to see if these guys are all about just the instruments and about having all their assistant, all their, crutches there, or could they just come and worship the Lord as it is? And so there's in my mind maybe a little bit of a test too, but not that I was in, I don't know, not that I don't know, like why I would test somebody, but I don't, I guess my thought was, I want to become friends with these guys and I want to get to know them. But to me, that's important that, they're not just about the show up there, but they're like serving in the shadows. And so I remember I asked you,
Yeah,
and you told me, yeah, we definitely want to come. Absolutely, we're going. And I was blown away. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So I remember you. I don't know if you remember the story, but you went and talked to
I did.
your team, and I don't know if you want to take it.
Yeah, I would say, I probably said yes to you. I don't remember the details, but I probably said yes to you before I even asked the team. With my heart is always was always, tight because the team could see if John would say no, I would not, even though I'm the leader of mission 1, John's the leader of the band, but that was the understanding, like, John decides all things band, right? So if John would say no, I would not be able to unwind that or undo that. But I just said yes because I knew I could talk to all of them and would make it work. It was such a beautiful weekend. We had such a great time that it was unnatural for us to say no to anything that was offered. So obviously the invitation came, we were honored. I spoke with them, they all agreed. I think the reason we never end up going is because we didn't have our passports and there was some technical difficulties. It wasn't a desire or a lack
Yeah,
of preparation. It was just we didn't have the right, the passports weren't there and we not all of us could go, and so we decided we couldn't. But
I think the other,
prob
I think the other thing you mentioned to me at the time was that Bethesda really wanted you guys to go with them.
at night.
Not only at night, but I think they had prepared like a meal, and they wanted
Yeah,
you guys to be there for that meal, which was obviously between churches. So
yeah,
it would have
you're right.
coincided with, yeah. So they were the ones that invited you guys, and you're the guests of honor, and they wanted to be there at this lunch. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, which is it's still a style something I stick to this day, like, honor the guests, obviously, right? The people that honored you. But um yeah, we were there for them, but at the same time I think we could have pulled it off. I don't remember the actual motive we didn't go, but that was one of them from what I remember. um Even like questioning if we have the ability to make it. But anyways, to be honest with you, like I remember it, any invitation, like I said earlier, to me is a side quest. And those are the spicy things that make, the main dish excellent. So the answer is yes, we just have to work it out.
yeah. So that was to me the fact that you were even willing to consider, and especially the fact that I said that I do remember saying. But unfortunately, I don't think you guys will be able to have all your instruments with you, the drums, because I don't think this
Yeah.
little church would be okay with that. Are you still willing to come? And the answer was yes. So to me, that was already like blew my mind. Just FYI. So anyway, to me, that was I remember that forever because, like I said, there was like, first of all, I knew it would have made those guys' day, but second of all, I'm like, I want to see what these guys are about, and I thought that was really cool. So,
Yeah. But how cool is it to be wanted, right? To be asked to go someplace. That's great. How can you say no to such an invitation?
and knowing you guys today, I am on 100% sure that you guys would have done it if it would have been possible. So
Yeah.
knowing that really strengthens that. So I know that for sure, especially that scenario. You guys. So first of all, I was very positive that you guys would have know it would have been blessed. You would have been blessed to bless those guys because they would have really appreciated. It would have blown their mind that
Okay.
this group of people from California. And back then, California was like in another
Of course.
world. They were there at our
Yeah.
baptism. So anyway, now you know Donnie Bidosescu and they're good friends of yours. So as they say, the rest is kind of history. But anyway, very cool story. So that's a kind of our maybe our beginning of the journey. Now maybe you have a different version of our kind of.
No, that's it. That's how I met you. Yeah.
Now you have a story, sort of how sort of Charity Cup and Mission One got together, and it had something to do with the convention. Maybe if you want to relay that over to the
Yeah,
audience.
so this was in the year 2000. LA was hosting the Pentecostal convention, and it's a big event. It was, you know, 4 or 5,000 people. It was massive. And I'm walking out of the event at the end of, I think it was a Sunday morning service, I had a lot on my mind. There's some cute girls, and we're gonna go to lunch. They're from Austria, and I was like, wow. And I had to worry about my car. I didn't have AC. I had a lot of personal things going on. My heart was like in all over the place. But with all that said, I looked up and I saw an ad for soccer. I'm like, this is anathema. Like, what is this nonsense? So that's my Pentecostal, my upbringing, not me the person, but like I'm like, what? This is weird. So I stopped in my tracks. I was outside the church. I popped back in to see the ad. It was right as everybody was leaving. Charity cup. I remember it was like kind of like an ad, like an ad on the radio, like they do all the time. So but it was visual and it was beautiful, and I got stunned, and I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna check this out." So I did. I pursued it, and obviously, I realized I have to make a team, and then you guys are gonna come down. You need some help with chairs. You need help with the national anthem, all sorts of things. But I didn't realize how strict you guys were, or how Baptist all this charity cup was. So my little church didn't have enough players, and I knew the rules. You have to have players for only two churches, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly,
there were
and
some rules, yeah, back in the day.
there
Yeah.
are some really strict rules, and we try to abide by them. And we got the rules down. We got everything worked out, except we're late. We're late, which is my Achilles heel. That's my issue in life. I was late in registering the team, and then I remember a phone call. I had no idea it was on the other line, except there's Dan Bora and Dan headed down, right? Danny headed down. And one of them was the good cop and one was the bad cop. And I was like, man, I got scolded for not registering a soccer team. I'm like, geez, not only scolded, I was told no, which is great. But in my world, it's like, we can do all things. What do you mean no? You know? What do you mean you guys, it's too late? What do you mean I missed a deadline? Just get me in there, find a way. And I got a stern no from one of the Dans. And, oh, come on, let's let him do it from the other Dan? And some people may know which one's which, but I'm not going to say it. And we ended up getting the grace, right? The good cop won out, the grace won out, and we played that tournament. Not only did we play soccer with our little church, which by the way gave us a few months of preparation. I met with the boys from both churches to do Bible study. I a lot of things started in that preparation. It was great. The outcome was a lot greater than the soccer debut we had on the field, and we made lifelong friends. But anyways, we prepared, we came, and then of course we're asked to do music, we're asked to, clean if we can or help if we can. And it was the first time I was part of any such wonderful thing between Romanians. It was almost like Mission One, but on the field. But it was like a convention of athletes, and I remember watching these guys that already we got beat early on in the day, and then later on in the day we're watching the better ones, and I was like, man, these guys are great. A newfound love for the sport, for the people. And I remember you guys how professional everything was and organized. And obviously we're used to that, but we're used to that in a church setting. This is a field, this is outdoors, and it was working like a well-oiled machine. It was beautiful to behold. And in the end, I was honored to be part of something so well done, so professional. And it definitely caught my attention, from the banner that I saw, the video that I saw, but ultimately the experience that day on the field was just something else. If I remember, it was just a one-day event. It was from morning to night.
It's very
And
possible, yeah, because at that
yeah,
time it was the first event. We didn't have as many teams, so we were able to fit it all in one day.
yeah, and just to let you know, because we're Mission One, me and Kat had to do the national anthem. That was my first time learning the Romanian national anthem. I had no idea that we even had that anthem, got the words. Practiced until like 3 or 4 in the morning, which was dumb because I couldn't play soccer at 7 or 8 when the game started. So, but anyways, we stayed up to because the national anthem had to be sung and we had to do it right. So we wanted to excel in that too. We can't, you know, fib or just fudge. So we did that, and we
But
sang music on the field. That's where our charity commission one interaction happened.
I want to tell the audience that I think you're being a little bit nice here and um, humble in some ways because we I remember we made the request to help with the music, but I don't know if we expected you guys to help with more, and that's what blew us away again. Because I remember not only did you show up with the music to sing, like the beginning, the opening ceremony, and the anthem, which apparently stayed up all night, which I didn't know. And you guys did a beautiful job, but here's Donnie pulling up with his truck and unloading all the speakers and like, and I suppose maybe that was already arranged, but to me that was amazing that somebody would do that. They set
Yeah.
up the speakers, and then after that, I don't know if you knew. Anyway, we didn't expect you guys to stay and help. At least that's how it is in my mind. The fact that you guys stayed for pretty much the rest of the day and help clean up, and pretty much a bunch of you guys help run the whole tournament. Like Kat was a field manager and pretty much stayed there all day. I don't remember exactly what you did, George, but to
I
me,
played Bora. I was a player as well, and we had music, so I was doing the soccer and the music.
and
Remember, there's 3 games.
I'm almost 100% sure you could probably care less about the soccer. It was more about probably bringing that experience to your church and the young people in your church. That
I
I
brought
kind of
20 guys
remember.
together. I brought
Exactly.
20 guys together every week. I could not bring them together at church.
Yeah.
This is from both churches, and some were not even Christian, but I brought them, and we became good friends, lifelong friends. You
And I
know,
think that's what I remember. That I think you were more about that than like let's win or how good are we gonna be. And I thought that always stuck out to me. But I want to tell you, like the whole team, to me, that was another testimony that these guys are way beyond just the music. And so the people we see up there singing, there's a lot more to them serving. So that was cemented in my mind that day again. So I remember it was like late at night, 10 o'clock. We were cleaning up and you guys are out there picking up the trash with us. And again, that we organized some events in other cities, but I don't think we ever experienced that from people we just met. So I'll just say
well,
that.
yeah, thank you. Prior to that, we had about 5 years of experience at conferences and events, and our
There you
motto
go.
was, at least, yeah,
Exactly.
me and Kat, first to show up, last to leave. And you do whatever is necessary to to cross the finish line, and then you stay after to make sure it's clean when you leave. So it was not like it was who we were. We weren't
Yeah.
pretending or trying to impress. We already did that, and to us, this was a received event. Everybody benefited, and we're like, oh man, we got to stay and do our duties. It was
So
part of the whole catch. The whole system.
I mean, I think now when you bring this up, I kind of realize it because we were never at a Mission One event, never experienced sort of ourselves what it takes to put it on and then see you guys serve in that way. But now I realize you guys probably were like almost putting yourself in our shoes. Hey, if this was a conference, this is what we had to do. We gotta tear down and set up, tear down, and like the whole 9 yards. I felt like that's what I felt like. You guys understood the whole
Yeah,
entire process, and now I understand why because you already have that experience of tearing up a whole entire event and pretty much being the last out of there. So
yeah,
anyway, so I think that's what kind of connected the two sort of team that came together, and then I believe after that we pretty much had our first sort of retreat in the winter where you guys came from the West Coast. I remember, and we met up in the middle in Colorado. That was an awesome meeting, um, and planned sort of the next year's mission trip, which by now I guess you could say the rest is kind of history, but that's kind
yeah.
of how the two teams came together. But I'll ask you since you're here, like, do you remember what was going through your mind as we were? I don't, dude, I remember to this day getting on the flight. I believe it was me, Herdian, Jello, I believe was there out of all people. Mike Guler, if I'm not mistaken. Like actually officially getting on this flight to fly to Colorado. And almost like it felt like we are going on a business trip, but we were just going to meet you guys. I don't, do you remember what was that like
Of
for
course I do.
you?
Yeah. Before I tell you that feeling, I'll let you know, or let the audience and a few months before this, we were in Chicago doing some conferences, and we ended up going to a Baptist church on a Sunday night. We were there for the conference, but somehow that worked out too. A small Baptist church, or relatively small, and we sang, and it was just the most amazing thing. And I remember they had a guest. His name was Valery Giletsky, right? He preached, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's cool. He's got a Moldovan accent." So we told them that we're gonna go with you guys to Romania. Like we're going to Romania. We didn't tell him. We told the church like we're going to Romania. We're getting ready. We're excited, you know. And then he comes and he shakes my hand, like me of all people, and he's like, "Venici in Moldova," you know. And I was like, "Where's that?" I thought Moldova was part of Romania, you know. Like he told me of a country that existed apart from Romania. I'm like, "What do you mean, Moldova? We're coming to Romania. Poate trecem și prin Moldova." He's like, "Nu, nu, țara Moldova." And I was like, "Okay, what is that?" You know, I had no idea that what you guys planned was also to do Romania and Moldova. You know,
I
to
didn't
us it
know
was
that.
Romania. Actually, let me take that back. This was prior to meeting you guys. This is actually the year we went to 1998 to Romania with
Yeah,
Mission One.
yeah,
This was 1997, 98. It was actually just Romania for us. Now that I remember, it was just Romania. He invited us to Moldova. I was like, sure, but where is that? You know, and not knowing that 2 years later, you guys would invite us again to Romania to redeem kind of our Romania experience from the first get go. But now we're going officially on a mission trip, a little more planned and organized, and we have Moldova. So to me, when we met in Colorado, it was like I was connecting dots. I was like, oh man, it's happening, you know. The It was like kind of like Paul in a dream. In a dream, it's not very concrete, but in a dream, he's like, "Treceți in Macedonia, you know, come to Macedonia." So Paul took it as God speaking to him because he did. To me, Valeriu saying, "Come to." I later found out he was like the president of the Moldavian, union and so on. I had no idea, right? When I met him in his church in Chisinau, I was like, "Oh, brother, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was." I think I met him in 2001, so it's 3 years ago,
yeah,
3 plus years. I go, 3 years ago, you were in Chicago. I was like his friend. I sat behind the pulpit and I spoke with him like a friend because we met in Chicago, you know? Had no idea where Moldova was. And now I was in his church, you know? And that's because of Charity Cup and because of that meeting in Denver. So in Denver, we drove, by the way. We took our cars. And I remember how cool it was to get a bunch of guys and girls. We packed up like 3 or 4 cars and we're like hauling, you know, we're going to Denver of all places. It was beautiful. You know, it was winter and there was snow and,
yeah,
I had a back wheel drive car. I had no idea, no chains, like totally unprepared for anything. But here we go, we're going, and it was like the excitement of something great, something that we had no idea where it's going to go. But it was the initial phases of greatness. And we were so excited to be part of it. And it was fun too, because that's the beauty of God. He gives you hard tasks, but he rewards you with great rewards, you know?
yeah, exactly. By the way, George, Gillespie was not only the president of the Baptist Association in Moldova, but I think he was a senator, so he was a
Yes, he
politician.
was.
Yeah,
Yes, he was. I found that out too. Yeah.
yeah. So he was a pretty big shot in Moldova. But anyway, I guess what I wanted to point out is that initial meeting with Colorado, I don't think any of us sort of knew that what would come of it. I mean, I think we wanted certain like this bond to happen, but we were not. I think we were more focused on what would happen next summer going together.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we realize how historic that meeting would become. Here we are, doing 20 something plus years later,
Yeah.
doing life together and doing important things together, as we like to say. But I remember meeting there, like you said, it was fun. We had a lot of fellowship at the same time, and then we sort of bonded this for this next trip that was going to happen.
Yeah, and if you remember Sunday night, we were invited at the church and we went, and to me it was the first time ever I saw a blended church, a Baptist Pentecostal church. And I was like,
Yeah,
wow,
you're
this is
right.
excellent. Yeah, this is excellent. I never thought this exists. And by the way, when I do go to Colorado still, and I go to that church, I still remind them of that trip in 2000, So I was there 25 years ago and the church was at the time still one, now they split. But it's an interesting backstory, how that was the very thing that it's almost like a confirmation that what we were doing with Mission One all these years can continue in the context of missions, in the context of outreach and so on. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was God's hands in all of this because essentially you guys were there. Your goal was to unite the youth for these conferences, Pentecostal and Baptist and whatever. And we were kind of trying to do that, but obviously on a sports side and with also more of a fundraising. But the point is, we were very for breaking these fences down. So I think the team was able to come together because I think we kind of felt the same about these issues.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think I was going to tell you earlier that when you mentioned about sort of the team that you guys had and sort of not having, these issues, whether it's the Pentecostal or, Baptist way. I think that takes a lot of humbleness to kind of maybe give in and really have a desire to serve no matter what, without like, you got to hold your point of view. And I think that takes humbleness, one, and just caring about the people in general. I want to.
Hmm, thank you. I would also say it was kinda, like, exciting that you could work or we can learn from each other, right? Because if you just do what you've already done, you're not gonna learn anything new. If you just meet with the people you already know, you're not gonna be challenged or stretched or taught differently, you know? And by the way, I started going to Baptist conferences quite a lot. And there were some things that I just loved, you know, the discipline that was there, the organization, the young guys, man, they were dressed in suits and ties. And I know that that could be a stuffiness to it, but to me it was the other extreme. We were very loosey goosey and not really careful how we dressed and how we portrayed ourselves as young people. We're playing the part of being young, and I saw some of these leaders like taking it very seriously. And you know, like I said, it's a nice blend of what we knew to what we were, what I didn't know, and I was taught, you know, some new songs, some new way to teach the Bible, you know, expository preaching, how to dress, how to lead groups. I learned from everyone, and we learned from everyone. It was fun. It was great. And I think that's the benefit of, you know, having, like you said, it's a humble spirit, but also it's also a yearning spirit. If you want to grow, you're not going to stick with your flock only. I mean, it's like reading the same books over and over and over, you know? It's like it's great for what it is, but you got to go outside of your genre, or outside of your style, outside of your exposure, you know? And I think the benefit comes because you become better at whatever you're called to do, you know? Not only you have a broader audience, but you have a better understanding of a lot more people and a lot more, and also of God. It's like God is not, you know, as we now do missions and we travel across cultures and boundaries and countries, everyone is different and everyone just adds to the mystique and the mystery and the just the wholeness of God, right? How big and how beautiful God is all in all, you know? And he manifests himself differently in different cultures and groups. But that all started, and that desire all started back to when we wanted to see different denominations and how they worship and why they worship like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
It prepared us for the mission field for sure.
yeah. No, I think you're right, foretelling, because I think as we started ministering together and going to the missions, we met a lot of different denominations in some ways. We met a lot of different styles of worship and
Yeah,
preaching, right? And I think you have to have that open mind and humbleness, maybe in some ways, to be open, and to not think you know everything. And I think that is very telling. I think praise God for that. So
yeah,
so George, no, sort of we talked about sort of this Charity Cup chapter. This obviously continues for many years. You're involved at this point in the Charity Cup uh, road. One of the things that I see, and one of the things that I learned from you throughout this friendship that we had together, was this willingness to jump in and like very spontaneously help whoever comes your way. And one example that comes to mind, which is just an indicator of this broader part of you, is I remember you telling me that some guy in the airport approached you and needed some money for a flight, and you
yeah.
gave him money for a flight to fly out of nowhere. I'm like
Yeah,
thinking
I
to
bought his
myself,
ticket. Um, well, I guess this is how I would approach that since you brought it up. That and other things in life. You know, obviously the golden rule is do unto others as you would like others to do unto you, right? And that's a big statement, but that should be not just a big theological statement or a creed. It should actually be in the nitty-gritty of life, right? So if I'm going to talk to someone, I'm going to talk with them no matter who they are, no matter what they deserve, quote unquote. I'm going to use respect because I would like to be talked to with respect. So I do unto them what I would like to be done unto me, right? And I found that that's like a key in educating students. I've done it for 27 years. I've never had a kid that flipped on me or that lost it on me because there's respect and I get respect, right? So it helps. It's very beneficial. It's the golden rule because it works in God's economy perfect. So if I'm in the airport and the guy is stuck and he has no money and his car's not going through and he's panicked and he has a wedding to get to and the situation was bleak. I think it was the last flight out. He had a few minutes to figure it out. and he wasn't gonna fly for free. He missed his flight, and we're gonna give him a ticket. So I was like, if I was in his shoes, it would be awful. But I'm not in his shoes. I'm in my shoes, and you were waiting for me outside. I missed my flight too. I remember, or something to that effect. And I was gonna go spend time with friends, and I had extra money in my pocket. And I was like, "Let me just buy him a ticket." I would like somebody to do that for me. And again, it's not that pay it forward mentality because I don't apply that forcefully. Like I'm gonna pay it because somebody's gonna pay for me. It spontaneously occurred to me, dude, I can buy this guy a ticket, and all this problem can just resolve itself, and that's fine. And he honestly, he said he's gonna pay me back, and I said, you don't have to, but if you like to, here's my information. He never paid me back, and that's fine because I just wanted to help him get out of that situation. I think he had his brother's either wedding or funeral the next day, I forget, in Texas, and he was stuck, and it was just a bad situation overall. And he had no way of getting over it. So I guess the mentality is, or the desire is, if I can help, and I did at the time. Why not? You know. Yeah, and I tell my students before they approach me many times with all sorts of requests, and I tell them the answer is yes. Let's just figure out how. So the answer is always yes. My default answer is we can do it. We have to figure out a way to do it. So in that situation, I had a way to do it. I just paid for his ticket. It was not a big deal. I haven't done that too often or at all, but up until that point, but it was natural. It came natural. So
Did you, by any chance, get a contact information or let's say help?
I did, but I don't remember his name, so I
Okay.
wouldn't find him even if I searched. But I got his contact. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I mean is, your normal mode of operation is you kind of become friends with this guy for life. He becomes, he follows you on Facebook. You keep in touch with the guy. It sounds like it
Yeah.
didn't become that kind of a story, but that is what many times happened.
That's right. And I would say every person I approach and we have a moment, whatever that moment is. Sometimes I give, sometimes they give, sometimes we share peanuts on the plane, whatever. I try to become friends. Now, I would say most people don't really need another friend or don't want another friend for some reason. But I'm always open to another friend. And I made so many great friends that way. And one of the Bible passages I use often is make friends with unrighteous riches. So an unrighteous riches would be a pack of peanuts or a couple of bucks in my pocket or a moment when I can be good to someone and I can make a friend. What a man, what an honor, to meet somebody that's who knows what they are, who knows what they'll do, but the idea that it's another human being with all sorts of history and a universe in itself, and I can become this person's friend because we had a moment. If we both want it. Obviously it's mutual. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's no disappointment when it doesn't, but man, when it does work, and I look back, I would say 90% of my friends that are not church friends were made because of doing something or using the riches that we have of this world, whether it's time or peanuts or some cash, or an opportunity to work for them and then just say, don't worry about it, or work for them and give them a deal. And that becomes a friend for life because they honor that. So it's a very interesting, I would say it's the un, unexpected. It's very unexpected to this day, but God still rewards that kind of mentality.
Okay. So we painted a little bit over the picture, but I mean, there's really many, many more stories. I mean, I think we can talk for a long time here. I don't think we'd be able to record all the discussions because you've told me many scenarios, or I've
Yeah.
seen many scenarios where I don't know whether it's some guy has a flat tire and will stop, and you're gonna like sit there and change his tire and fix his car, and oh, this could happen many times. It would just be too long. But George, what I want to ask you, how did you come to this mentality, like to think like that about people? Is there an identifying moment, or is there an identifying person that sort of, I don't know, put this in your mind to think of serving people in that way, or do you have any explanation?
Yeah, I don't, and that's interesting. I've never been asked that question. I don't think I have a moment that defined it, or a moment when I realized I'm going to do this and I enjoy doing this. I would just say, probably traveling abroad, especially to Romania, Moldova, and other places of unfortunate folks and fellas. I think it's just a mindset that we cultivated on the mission field, right? You go to help, and you're there in help mode for a week or two or a month, and you're there to give. You're not there to get anything. You're just there to give, 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 right? And you just become that person. Like we don't do missions as a side gig, we don't do missions as a uh, here or there where we have some extra time. It just becomes that. And I realize, man, if I'm in a foreign land, or if I'm in a place where somebody's needy, and I can do this for him or her, and I do joyfully because I'm in that mindset of I'm on a mission field, what the heck would stop me? And actually, why not do this? I'm there for what, 2 weeks out of 52 weeks, right? Because we would go every year at least 2 weeks, or let's say 4 weeks because we went in the winter. That's 1 month out of 12. What's stopping me for the 11 months to do this on a daily basis, you know? Not only like daily, obviously serve somebody, find a it's not like I look for these opportunities, but obviously God decides once in a while, like, "Hey, try this or try that, or let's test this." And, I don't know where it happened, but it definitely got cultivated on the mission field with you guys. Knowing how everybody, doctors, dentists, engineers, put everything down, and we embark on a plane, and now we're going to go all out without any reservations, without any limits. We're going to come back with no money. We're going to come back with no energy. We're going to come back with no more like we're not going to think of ourselves for the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. And we did that so many times that it just became who I am. Like, I'm not unique in this. You're like this too. And like me, like you and I, there's others, to whatever degree they do it. Maybe they don't share about it or have stories around it, but I know our team is all like this. To make life count, obviously, it's kind of like saying, if life only counts in the moments that you're at church, or only the moments you're on the mission field, or only the moments when you're talking about God, what a wasted opportunity, because life should count at every moment, right? Moses would say, teach us to number our days, to gain a heart of wisdom. So every day is special and every person's special. And not like in a generic sense, like I'm trying to be spiritual, but interestingly enough, every person is an interesting thing, an interesting entity, I should say. And given enough opportunity or enough time and interaction, it could be a 10-second conversation or a 2 hour, or a sleepover if you invite them over. Um, that could become a moment of like interaction with the person or with the need or with and the mission field is everywhere. It's not just where we go to it. So I think that's what, thanks for the question, but I never thought about it in that way. That's how I see it. It's a mindset versus a destination.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, praise God for that. And that's why I was trying to get to the how did you come to that mindset? Because you're right, it is a mindset. And I guess another way to explain it to the audience who maybe doesn't know you personally, I feel like you're one of those guys that's rare and has this rare trait of helping somebody. And here's an example. I was talking to somebody else about this, but I say somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, George, can you help me out? I just bought an apartment, or I moved into this house, and I'm looking for a table. By any chance, nobody has a table?" You're the type of guy that would say, "Yeah, here's the table. Take the table." And then you'd call them up and say, "Hey, by the way, do you need a lamp? Do you need a bed? Do you need this?" You think beyond sort of their immediate need and like almost think for them. How can I serve you even more? Or hey, I got this other friend who has this and this. Let me connect it to him and like almost think for that person or how else he can help. So I think to me that's a unique trait that God has put in you. Um, and I'm not I don't want to like as they say in Romania, set the loud neapărat, but I think I want to inspire people that are hearing this to um I don't know to think of that and maybe in their life and serve God in that way. But I want to tell you that that is a huge way of serving God, and I think I maybe speak for others when I say this, but I want to thank you that for being that type of friend to me many times. Like, hey, Bor, have you thought of this? How about let's go beyond? And like many times you go way beyond the even initial request. So I guess I
Let
want
me
to thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I appreciate the words and obviously the statements that you made. I appreciate them very much. I was thinking prior to coming on the call, I had this one nagging thought, so I'll share it with you and the audience. When Jesus asks us to be faithful in the little things, right? Um, and then we'll be rewarded for much, or faithful in the things that we're called to. They don't have to be little, but obviously he makes a big deal of little things. Like he uses a cup of water as an example, right? He could have used something else. Or he uses a visit to jail to say, when you visited me when I was in jail. It's like, oh Lord, really? You don't have other, like, maybe I don't know, you visited me in sub-Saharan Africa when I was thirsty on in a desert. You know, he didn't embellish it. He said prison. I was in prison and you visited me, or you gave me a cup of water, or you did it in my name. When you did it in my name, you did it unto me, you know? And he uses these little things and he makes a big deal out of the little things. And I think that's our God. He all the attention is in the details. And then if the details are set right, the big picture always comes, comes to plan. And I figured whenever I read the Bible, I always gravitate towards some verses, and some of them that always made me rejoice was, entertain. Oh, excuse me. Take guests over, bring guests into your house, because others, having done so unknowingly, entertained angels. And I was like, wow, what an honor. Like somebody says, hey, can you host an angel tonight? I'll be like, yeah, of course. Anybody would be, yes, of course. But God comes in the form of a broken person on the airplane that doesn't have any place to go, and you're like, come on over. You can sleep at my house. Why not? Or somebody on the side of the road that you pick up as a hitchhiker, and your car breaks down and now you're stuck with him, and you're like, okay, you're not going to put him back on the road, so he sleeps with you in the same room, because you're entertaining the idea that perhaps God is, and I'm not looking for these events, by the way. I'm not looking for the little things, but the little things matter to God. Faithfulness matters to God, right? So, and I thought about this, how, me and you, we both had small churches, and at one point you said, you tell me this, you don't need a big workshop to create a masterpiece, right? And you see, I think you mentioned Stradivarius, or the violin maker. It's like, no, he didn't have a workshop that's the size of a, of a warehouse. He had a small workshop. And I was imagine the masters of Italy and others had a little workshop, or if they had a bigger one, big deal. But in other words, God can do masterpieces in small places. So it's not size that matters, it's faithfulness and it's dedication, and so I think these little things that you mentioned, I just like to believe that if we do the little things correctly, and obviously I'm not unique in this is biblical wisdom, and you do the opportunities that you have, they'll eventually work out in the long run. Things will work out because God decides to put things together, and for example, another verse is cast your bread upon the waters, which is foolishness, because bread in the water, the fish will eat it, the ducks will eat it. But the Bible says, no, if you cast it upon the waters, later on, it'll come back to you. It's like, what do you mean it'll come back to me? And there's these verses that are so intriguing because they're not logical, or they don't make sense. If you give a cup of water to a person, it's like giving a cup of water to Jesus himself. That makes no logical sense at all. And yet it does, because in God's economy, it's the faithfulness to little things that matter. Now, let me just wrap this up. And I thought about this, and I thought, yeah, but God doesn't just work in the little things, right? When he talks about the faithfulness of the people that got the coins, or they got the money, I don't know if you remember, but the guy that had one coin had the excuse. And the excuse was, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to risk
Right.
it. And the point is, God does not look at great, things are not great because they're big or large, or humble because they're small, or they're great because they're petite. No, God can work with multitudes too. Like the guy that got 10 was faithful with 10, and the guy with 5 was faithful with 5, and the guy with 1, oh, that sly little sucker, was not faithful with 1. So he got chastised and he got punished, right? So it's not a matter of great or small. It's a matter of what's before you. It's being faithful in what is before you. So, if somebody has a flat tire, that's before me, not another. I can't create another concoction of hosting an angel at my house. I have a guy that has a broken tire. That's my opportunity. I take it or leave it, and nobody knows except me and God. I take it or leave it, right? Now, if they're bigger things, right? Like if God calls us to, whatever, if he gave us 10 what's it called, coins, or 10, the money, what's it called, the dinars, then we're responsible for 10. We're not responsible for 1, right? So as we're entrusted with more, we're supposed to do more, right? And at the same time, not neglect the small duties of a small or insignificant things. Everything matters. Attention to detail matters. Everything matters. Everything's important. I love that. Everything's important,
Yeah.
great or small. It's not the size. It's the faithfulness to the task at hand, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's really cool. So yeah, thank you for that wisdom. George, now I wanted to jump into one other topic real quick, and then we'll
Sure.
kind of land this plane. Um, you're a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot to even unpack there, right? How it, but I wanted to just share with the audience, how did you become a teacher? I think you had a pretty interesting story, and I don't know if you have any other, some interesting stories that you want to share with us in your sort of long career as a teacher, because I think That's also quite an interesting journey, you know, just knowing you and you telling me stories here and there. So maybe how did you become a teacher? Was it something you always wanted?
No. Ironically, I'll just start with this. Thank God I became a teacher in 2000, the same year I met you guys, because I was a teacher and because it's the perfect career for short-term missionaries like we were. I had all the summers off. There's not a time when we had a mission trip that I couldn't go. I also had the winters off. I also had, months and weeks throughout the year. So I got paid to be free. It's a career I had that was like the perfect fit for me as like a hand in glove to do what I did. Ironically, the same year I started with you guys with Charity Cup. So it's been 27 years of the same thing of like, parallel roads, if I can call it that. So going back to my career choice, I did not want to be a teacher. Like I said earlier, I didn't want to work with people or kids for that matter, but God did. So the way He did it, I was my third year of college. I thought I was going to be a business major. I took business classes. I wasted a whole year. None of that mattered in my eventual career. And about 2.5 years in, almost 3 years in, I was at the point where my general eds were done. I was not really, mission one had started. I didn't know purpose in life. I was kind of lost, like all young men tend to be in their early 20s. And I had a really nice mentor. The guy was he was my music teacher, but he was a philosopher as well. And I found out later he was a UCLA professor that taught on my Cal State as a professor. He moved to Cal State. He was very smart, very young, dynamic, and wise. And I picked his brain. I go, Dr. Radomski is his name. And I go, Dr. Radomski, can we have a chat? So he offered me time, and we went. We had a meal. And he was Catholic, and he was actually, I found out later, a priest. But he looked at me. He goes, and I told him, look, I'm kind of confused. I've been going to college for 3 years. I have no idea what I want in my life. I don't know what I do. I'm kind of, I don't know, like life just doesn't have any meaning. It's just purposeless, you know? I was at the total extreme of what I was about to be when I met you guys. I was totally like a ship without an anchor, not knowing sure where the winds are going to take me, right? And so he goes, George, you're a Christian, are you? I said, yeah, of course, Dr. Adomsky, you know that. And he goes, well, think about it this way. On this side of heaven, we don't see the beautiful tapestry that God's doing. We will eventually see it when we make it to heaven. But on this side, it looks messy. It looks like if you look at a Persian rug, on the opposite side, it looks very messy. But the beautiful side is what's being crafted in heaven, right? So whatever God is doing through you, for you, in you right now, it's okay. It looks messy. It's ugly. It's frustrating. You don't understand it. Give it a chance. Just believe that He's doing something beautiful on the other side and for a different purpose. And I said, okay, which meant He was asking me to trust God no matter what I'm doing. And then I go, yeah, but I don't know what classes to take because my third year I was about to be finished. I'm going into the summer. Like, I don't look forward to the fall. What classes do I take? And he goes, well, God, this is how God works many times, right? He gave me two scenarios that are beautiful. He goes, every morning, for the daily duties, wake up and say, Lord, I want to have an adventure with you today, me and you. And you ask Him on your daily walk. That day is you and God. Now go throughout your day, do the best that you can. And at night, you have one of two prayers. Lord, thank you. It was a beautiful day with you. Let's do this again tomorrow. Or Lord, I blew it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Let's do it again tomorrow. So basically each day stands alone. But you have one of two options each day. But as you do this faithfully, the little things, every day is a little day. But as you do this, eventually you look back and you realize that God is crafting something in you. And he goes, when you look back now, connecting the dots, as it were, he didn't use that phrase, but I'm using it. If you look back now, you will see that wherever you've gone up until this point, God will use that to propel you forward, whatever his plan is. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, what kind of classes have you been taking? I said, math and science. He goes, well, you probably need to get a degree in either math or science. What kind of, and he basically walked me through a basic understanding of, so I ended up walking away saying, okay, let me get the school catalog. I opened up to the bachelor degrees and I was tired of school 3 years in without a plan. And I was like, what degree can I get first in the next 2 years? Because now I was going on a 5-year plan because the first year I wasted in economics and business law and things that didn't matter, right, for my math or science. And the closest degree that was chemistry. Now, this requires a lot of faith. Like, I didn't care for chemistry, but that was the thing I can finish in 2 years. And I had no idea what I'm going to do with chemistry in my life, but he told me not to worry about it. The tapestry is being woven. I just got to be faithful every day. So I took him for the next 2 years. I just took every class that I needed to from the catalog, very basic, very emotionless. And I went to class as if God himself told me to go to that class. and I would do my best, and I graduated, and I got a degree in chemistry, and I was 23, 5 years in, and now I had a degree in my hand and nothing. I had no purpose. I tried to get jobs. I tried to do, anyways. My heart was in cars. I was working with my dad, and we had a shop, and we opened up my dad, his partner moved, so now he was alone. I could be his partner. My world just opened up. I was going to be my dad's partner. So for a year and a half, we had this. It was hard to open up a business checking account. We did. We opened up a dealership. We bought cars, fixed cars. I was learning from him more than he was, using me. But about a year and a half into this, I tried to get jobs. I was not reckless with my time, but I didn't want to work in chemistry. I didn't want to work in a dumb lab. I kind of, at this point, I was kind of enjoying the cars and the freedom and the outdoors, and people, to be honest with you. I started liking people. And I was doing this, and about a year and a half into this, out of the blue, without any like forewarning, my dad comes to me one day. He goes, "Get out." He's never done this in my life ever in 51 years, then or after that. Like, he doesn't do this ever. What do you mean, get out? He's like, "Get out of the shop." And I go, "Dad, what are you talking about?" He goes, "You have a degree in chemistry and you're working cars with me? You're wasting your life." I got a knot in my throat, and pride just swelled in me. I'm like, "Oh, I'll show this guy. Like, he thinks I can't do without him. He wants to keep me under his thumb, blah, blah, blah." The manly thing at 23, you decide to be your own person. But I had no plan. And I had a friend at the time. Her name was Lija, and she was a teacher in Long Beach. And I said, "Hey, Lija, like, I want to come out there talk." I had free time, and let's have lunch. So I go to see Lija to have lunch with her. She's teaching. She's a first or second grade teacher. I forget what grade. And as we're eating, like, I don't know why she mentions I should get a job as a substitute. And I go, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You have freedom. You can make extra cash. They need substitutes. You're a man. They need men in elementary." And I was like, "What? I came to have lunch with you. Tell me about a job." Anyways, she opened my eyes to the world of teaching. I never thought I could teach. That moment opened my eyes to teaching. I applied to be a substitute. They told me it'll take a month and a half, excuse me, to get approved by the board, FBI background checks, blah, blah, blah. But it was still in the early stages of, early 2000. Sorry, 1998 at this time, 97, 98. And man, I get a call. The next morning, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's the substitute system. "We need you at this school." I was like, "I'm not trained. I didn't get board approved. I have no idea what I'm doing." I woke up. I was like, "What the heck, Lord?" I got dressed. I went to school, and I had 4 hours with these kids. And by the way, I walked in like totally unprepared, but I was like, "Okay, let's see what happens." And I asked the kids, "What do you guys do every morning?" Now, I didn't realize the teacher leaves a plan. I had no idea. Nobody told me there's going to be a plan. I asked the kids, "What do you do every day?" "Well, we sing a song." I said, "Well, let's sing the song." We sang the song. "Then what do you do?" "We say the pledge." "Well, let's say the pledge." "What else do you do then?" "Well, we read for 10 minutes." "Let's read." "What else?" "We go play." "Well, let's go play." So the kids led me because I had no idea what I'm doing. But at recess, the first recess was within like an hour and a half. I'm like exhausted. I'm like, "This is kind of fun, but I have no idea what I'm doing. This is weird." Like, not knowing there's a plan all along. And the kids stayed behind, about 4 or 5 kids. And one girl, this was fifth grade, one girl, they're about 10 years old. She looks at me, and I could see like she had this like attraction to me as a young man, like a girl would have to a father. She goes, "Mr. Puraci, my daddy died in the war." This is late 90s. I'm like, "Really? What war did he die in?" In my head, I'm thinking, there's no war. Like Iraq war, we lost like 2 soldiers or whatever. We didn't lose. There's no way her dad died in the war. That's BS. So I let her talk. I asked her questions. "What do you mean?" And then she tells me, "I have 5 other siblings." I'm like, "Great. Tell me more about them." "Well, they each have different daddies." I'm like, "Oh, a girl with 5 siblings, and they each have different daddies." And of course, her daddy conveniently is dead in the war. So mama doesn't have her asking about daddy. And she's 10, and my heart broke. I'm like, "Dude, this girl needs like a father figure." And I was like, I'm not prepared to be anything. I was like a 23-year-old young man, but I'm like, man, my heart broke for her. Anyways, I wrapped up the day about 12 o'clock. I screwed it all up. That school never invited me back, by the way. That was the one time I went to that school. Now, after that, I learned the trick, and I got invited to the same school for like a year and a half that I did substituting. I was like their best sub. But this school, I screwed it up so bad, I never got invited back. I guess the teacher complained that I followed none of the plan, but God just had me there to hear that girl and her 5 siblings with 5 different daddies. And her daddy died in the war. So that broke my heart, and that put me on a trajectory to like kids and listen to kids and ask questions of kids and realize each kid has a whole history, because you see a kid for a few minutes, but they have 10 years of experience. A lot of it traumatic, a lot of it fun, a lot of it whatever. And I ended up, substituting, cruising $80 a day. It was fun. I could do missions. That's when we started going with Charity Cup. I'm sorry, with Mission One, and eventually with Charity Cup. But yeah, but it was Mission One still. I could do missions, I could sing, I could travel. I was not tied to a schedule because you pick a job at a time each day. Long story short, I loved it for a year and a half. But at one point, we were doing Mission One had this thing where after like an event, we would go to the beach and sing for like hours. Hundreds of people. So I show up there. Now I knew a lot of the people because I've done this for years. But some dude sits next to me. I've never met this guy in my life, and that was kind of weird because I knew most everybody there. And he goes, "Have you thought about having your own class?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, you're substituting, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I don't know how we talked about substituting. Have you thought about just having your own class? I go, "No, this is not a career. This is just to make money." He's like, "Think about it." And he walked away. And I was like, "Dude, that's interesting." And that kind of started my spinning. Like, why am I substituting? I'm enjoying a class for a day, but I'm not building anything of long term or of sustenance in these people's lives. I'm great at it, but that's not enough. So like he sparked an interest and I ended up getting a full-time job, and that was in 2000, and that was 27 years ago, 26 years ago, and 27 years of teaching, 28 with a substitute. I look back and it's been just a journey that I did not choose. I didn't want to walk on it. I had no idea I was going to do this and like it and be good at it to whatever degree I'm good. But it was just these little jots, these pushes in the right direction, by God, using simple people and basic words.
Man. And like you said, 27 years later, almost flew by. But
Yeah.
but I remember, like I said, I want to bring this up because it's hard to capture this 27 years. But I remember many times when I talked to you, the many stories you have told me where you had a chance to impact somebody's life, especially a young person, for God's kingdom. So, does a particular story come to mind where you can kind of
Yeah, of
emblematic of?
course. Yeah, I think here's the emblematic part. There's a lot of how can I put this? Cliches, right? And they're always, and they're true many times because that's why they exist, but it's cliche. Or maybe some stories that are generalized. So for example, all the teachers know that it's the kids that you least expect that will surprise you the most. That's kind of a given, right? The ones that need you the most are the ones that are the worst kids. That's a given. And so on and so forth, right? Jesus said, "I have not come for the healthy, I've come for the sick," and so on. That's like a worldwide phenomenon, right? But even knowing that, obviously in class, it's the kid that frustrates you the most is the kid that you hope they're absent the next day, or you hope that they would just stop it, or you hope they do mature sometime. I had this kid, he just pushed the wrong buttons for me for a few years. I taught him in engineering, I taught him in physics. I couldn't get rid of him. He was always in one class or another for a few years. He was just rambunctious. He was just the kid his name was Ethan. That name itself, tell any educator, I dare you, ask them, "What do you think about Ethans?" And they'll say they're the worst kid ever. It's kind of like this generalization that happens to be true. So this dude, Ethan, was like just not a good kid. And I told him what to do, what not to do. And in that engineering class, we had some wood machinery that was dangerous. And at one point, he goes against everything I taught him, goes after school, wiggles his way in and cuts his finger, like not all the way, but he chops it. I never got a kid got hurt. And I was like, "What do I do now?" The teacher that was in class, because I was sharing a class with another teacher, he calls me. So I show up and I'm responsible. And I'm like, "He was on your watch. He was my kid, but it was after school. Long story short, because I'm the senior teacher, I'm like on the hook. The assistant principal comes. He doesn't know what to do. He panics. I'm like, "Dude, you're in charge. Like, do something." He's like, he didn't know what to do. I pick up the phone. I call his parents. I'm like, "I see a lawsuit. Obviously the kid was in the wrong, but he still was allowed to do it. So we are on the hook." Anyways, the dad's at the gym. The mom doesn't care. They're both educators, but I guess the mom wasn't in town and the dad was at the gym. Yeah. But I knew them because of this kid was a troubled kid. I called before. Anyway, so I'm like, "Freaking Ethan, dude, now I got to deal with your stupid. So I take him to the ER and I stay there for hours with him while his dad finishes his workout because his dad doesn't care for him. So I'm like, "God, Ethan. Anyways, get to the ordeal. We made fun of his finger. I'm hoping the parents don't sue. Everything is chill. Time passes. He graduates." I'm like, "Good." He wants me to fix his car after high school. I'm like, "Ethan, I fixed this car." I can't get rid of him. Now he's like my friend. I'm like, "Oh my God. Like I like him, but I don't like him close because he always has trouble. He makes trouble. He's the kind of kid that is stubborn. You say it and he'll do the opposite and then get in trouble and then come back for support. So finally he goes to the military. I'm like, oh, good, he's gone. They're gonna discipline him there. Man, he drops out of the military, and everything he tries, he doesn't work. He's back with his dad. He fights with his dad. I'm like, oh man. Long story short, he calls me one day. He's like, Mr. Puraci, I found a girl. I'm like, good. They're in Iowa somewhere. And he goes, can you officiate our wedding? And I'm like, what? Can you officiate our wedding? I'm like, Ethan, like, I got to think about this. Like, do you go to church? Like, there's no way he went to church when he was in high school. He was trouble. He was causing issues. At some point, he even snuck into a different teacher's computer room, took every motherboard out of every computer, and built his own Bitcoin machine in my class without me even knowing because he did it behind the scenes. I almost got in trouble for that because he stripped all the computers. Dude, genius, but a menace, right? Anyways, I think because we let him off the hook then, he was mining Bitcoin at school. I had no idea what
No
Bitcoin is.
way. That's
And
crazy.
yeah, dude, he was mining it overnight. And I told him, you can't run the machines overnight. And he still did. Anyways, they found out I didn't get in trouble. He didn't get in trouble. But I think because of that, when he broke his finger, he was, grateful and the parents didn't sue. But long story short, he's out of high school. He calls me and I go, what church do you go to? Well, be in, Lily, we go to this church here in, I think it was Iowa. And I go, well, have them officiate your wedding. Mr. Puraci, you don't get it. We have to come back to California. We're broke. And these pastors want $500 plus the plane ticket plus hotel rooms. We can't afford all that. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. And I'm like, oh my God, like, do I really want to do this guy's wedding? The troubled kid, the one kid that pushed all my wrong buttons in high school. And I never was mean to him, but I was never like looking forward to a lifelong relationship. Not with this kid. So, anyways, he calls me. I agree. We get on a phone call, a Zoom call. We discuss the details. Long story short, just to bring it all together and land this plane, I find myself at his wedding in the backyard in some area here in the farmlands, and there was about 300 people. She's Mexican, he's white. From his side, there was like 5 or 10. From her side, it's packed, and they're all blinking and they're all looking at me. And I go, Ethan, how long do you want this ceremony to be? I talked with him earlier. He goes, well, whatever you want. I'm like, no, give me some numbers. Most of the weddings I do, especially even family members, they say preach for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, like kind of rush it. There's no need for sermons at a wedding. He goes, Mr. Puraci, at least half an hour. I'm like, what? He's all, preach at least half an hour. They want to hear. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I had almost a half-hour sermon in a backyard with 300 random strangers because of Ethan. And he's sitting there blinking, smiling, and his wife is like excited. And now they have 2 kids and they live in the town that he left from. He came back from Iowa. But looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, Lord, like you put me through all this so that at some point I can just say yes begrudgingly. I have to admit, I've done weddings for other students because they're good kids, they're Christians, but this kid was like trouble. He told me he found the Lord. I believed him. I listened to him. I saw it. I see it. He has a God-fearing family. And I look back and I'm like, man, if that wasn't like the ultimate redemption story, if that wasn't one kid that I would have, in my wisdom, would have cast aside, and God said, no, 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 not Ethan. And at his wedding, of course, I mentioned all this, and everybody smiled and laughed because they all had issues with the kid. Like all of them had problems with him growing up, the family on his side. And everybody knew how stubborn he was. And yet God had redeemed him, and God redeemed in my head as well, in my experience, so that we can have a good relationship. And I fixed cars for him since, and we talked, and he's such a gentleman. He turned out to be much better than anybody else. And the best kids, this is the irony of it all, the kids you think are going to be something in life, and they may be, they'll never come and say thank you. Zero. Like absolutely 99% of all the kids that I thought were going to honor me with a text or a Facebook post or just say, hey, man, thank you. Like those are the people that never, the 10 lepers, one will come back. And that's the one that actually gets God to notice. And this guy came back and he's still back. He's still in my life. And I look back and I'm like, man, if I didn't learn this lesson 1,000 times, but in his case, it was very pronounced. I have to let God work and just do the things that need to be done. That's it.
Man, that's an awesome story, and there's probably quite a few others. But this is very emblematic, like I said, of the way you serve people. In this case, your students. So that's really cool. So awesome, awesome. Yeah, there's probably a lot to say there, and I'm sure you along the way, like you said, you probably had challenges. You're like, why, Lord, why do I have to do this? Why
Oh, yeah,
me?
of
Why,
course.
reluctant? But yeah, sometimes you only see the results much later on, and you realize God knows much better. So
Well, it's that bread upon the water, right? Like, Lord, why am I throwing good bread to the fish? Like I'm wasting good bread. It'll never come back to me ever. Like there's no chance of bread surviving water, right? But
yeah,
the Bible says it will come back to you. And so I'm not waiting for that. I'm not holding my breath. But endless accounts of people that came back and because I did something insignificant or something to me insignificant, but to them enough to warrant a thank you years down the road.
yeah, yeah. That's and hopefully the results will be seen in heaven, and another
Yeah,
soul.
yeah,
So so George,
absolutely, yeah.
as we kind of near the sort of the end of this podcast, please share, if you can share a few thoughts with the people that are listening that are maybe younger or starting out. What suggestion would you have for them to make their life count?
It was mentioned throughout the speech, but I would say always focus on the next step, on the next thing, on the no matter how small the thing that you have to do it well. Again, a biblical verse, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, and do what is in your world. So if you're in eighth grade, let's say you're a 14, 13-year old in eighth grade, the most important thing you can do is pass your eighth grade classes and go to, show up. Like we had that motto, show up, be first and leave last. Like don't hurry to go through the experience, but enjoy the experience because you're never going to be in eighth grade again. If you're on a mission trip, you may not be on a mission trip again. Experience it fully, completely. Do the thing that you're doing with all your might. Do it completely. Focus on the details, on the small details. Be ready for the main dish, but also allow room for God to do his, side quests and his little fun things. So expect the unexpected along the way, and ultimately trust God, not the process, but trust that God that made you or allowed you to do certain things has a plan. The bigger plan may not be revealed to you, may not be known to you. You may think that you're wasting your time, like I was in front of that piano, not knowing that the piano will help me years down the road. But you never know. Some things that you do faithfully, the little things you do faithfully today, at some point in God's greater plan, and only in His wisdom when He orchestrates them, when He puts them all together, it's going to be a beautiful piece. It's going to be a beautiful, like I said, the tapestry, right? We don't see all of it now. We will never see all of it, but to whatever degree we can, God allows us to continue so we can trust that He has a bigger, broader, greater plan in mind. So I wouldn't say search and do the great things. I would say search and do the important things, the immediate things, the necessary things, dutifully, faithfully, important. If you're given much, do much. If you're given little, be faithful in little. If you're given a task, hey, be the best that you can at that task. There's no thing that's insignificant when it's done right, when it's done with the right attitude, and obviously for the right with the right motivation, and do it with joy. I would add that on top of all that. What's the point of serving our great God and doing things and doing it like you're marking off a calendar or marking off a to-do list? That's like the most wretched way of doing life. If you're not going to serve with joy, what's the point of serving? So find joy in what you do. Find excitement in the things that were given to you. And if you don't find it, ask God to reveal it or ask God to, we're not doing things because they're fun. We're doing things because they're important, but allow God to reward you with that joy in the middle of your work, in the middle of your daily duties. And sometimes the days are long. Sometimes the weeks are long. Sometimes the years are dry. So what? Do it anyways. Have fun doing it. Faithfulness in itself is the reward. And ultimately, there's more than just that reward, obviously. There's always more than you expect with God. And ultimately, sometimes you may have to do the small things, and this is my last statement, but don't be afraid to ask for bigger things. Like I had the example with the dog, or things that seem impossible, or things that seem beyond you. Do your things faithfully and ask for maybe walk up to that fence and say, "Hey, I want that dog back," or "I want this thing had to happen," or "Lord, I'm asking a lot of you, but I know you can." So let God surprise you with the unexpected and with the bigger things. But I think that only comes with the foundation of being faithful in the little things, and at that point you have the boldness and the courage to say, Lord, I want more, or I want to see more, so we enter boldly into his presence and ask for more
Yeah,
after we've done what we've already been given,
yeah.
that's the takeaway.
hmm Very no, excellent, very good. Thank you for that advice, and I hope whoever hears it will follow it and falls on good years. So,
Yeah.
um, George, I hope to kind of have a few more of these episodes with you in the future. You and I discuss some other projects that we can maybe dive into regarding a podcast, maybe with some people, like your father, like
Sure,
stories like him. So for the audience, look, I look forward to having you back on this podcast, or maybe another project we can start together to feature those stories. So thank you for being here and for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for sharing kind of your history a little bit, and hopefully that inspired a lot of people. I know it did. I know it will, and I know I learned a lot. And there's a lot of things that even though I know you pretty well, there's a lot of things that I learned right now today just from the discussion with you. So thank you for that. As sort of the last thing that I usually like to do, I have this segment that's called perspectives. And what perspectives is basically a series of words where I get people's perspectives about those words in like a few seconds, like the first thing that comes to mind. And I don't know, just I at the end I might piece them all together one day to show the different perspectives on this word from all these people that I've interviewed. So without any further ado, just if you can give your perspective on these words and what
sure.
first comes
I'd
to
love
mind.
to.
So all right, so the first one is the best word. Everybody loves this word, JK. What do you think about politics?
Oh man, it's the affairs of man, played out with all the tools of man, right? That will nauseate us if we only delve into politics. So I would just say that the affairs of man played out with the shenanigans of man to whatever degree you can imagine that craziness, and it'll it'll just spin us. It'll like disorganize everything within us if we only look at the politics, only politics. If
Amen.
we're not looking at something else, yeah.
Thank you for that. What do you think about economy? What are your thoughts on that?
um, economy is the struggle of making life work or making things work. So I would say it's the struggle at every level, from personal to federal to international, to make things work. It's almost like man, I'm not really finding the experience right now. It's a based. I'll say it like this: it's every man's struggle, no matter what level of no matter what level of richness or poorness you're at. So it's every man's struggle, no matter what, or every nation's struggle. Endless struggle of everybody, whether it's private or corporate.
Cool. What do you think about wealth? What are your thoughts about wealth?
Um, I would say 90. I shouldn't say a number, but a huge percentage of people think of wealth as money. I think the joys of wealth is anything but money. If
Hmm.
you can imagine wealth in anything but money, I think that's where the fun and the excitement comes. So wealth is money, of course, but more than it's almost like inverse, like more than 90% of all real wealth. So if I was going to put a number on it, I'd probably go as high as 99.9% of all real wealth is not money. Money is just a small portion of wealth.
Cool. All right. What do you think about truth?
Mm. A then endless quest for perfection, and along the way we get snubbed, stuffed, and tempted with lies. We tend to enjoy lies more than truth, but I think it's the endless pursuit of perfection, and we should never give up on it.
Cool. George, switching a little bit topics, sort of. What do you think about dating? I know we're not, you're not in that scenario, but maybe some advice for
Yeah.
people or whatever comes to mind.
Um, I would say it's the most misused term and the most misunderstood, I would say, by people that are not married, or maybe the most mispracticed. It's not something I recommend unless you want to get married, um, or unless you're of the age or of the means to get married. And it sounds goofy saying that, but being on this side of a marriage for 18 years now, I look back and it's like it's again, it's misused time, it's misused emotions, it's misused loyalties, and if most of the time is done incorrectly, and I would highly recommend against it unless you do it correctly. If you do it correctly, it's the most beautiful thing, especially because it leads to marriage. But most of the time, it's done incorrectly, and it's a devil's playground.
Okay, very good. What do you think about love since it ties to this?
Um, I would say it's the joy of life. Love is like it should be encompassing from the thing you do to the most important um person in your life. I think love should tie everything in life together. So in other words, it's not the same type of love, obviously, but there should be love in all things life. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing with love, or worth loving, I should say. And that goes for, platonic relationships. There should be love there. That goes for your career choice or your job. You should love that you have the opportunity to work and minister in that way. And it goes to, the most important types of love, like siblings or parents or wife or children, and then to the ultimate love, which is God. So if it's worth doing, if it's worth relating, any form of relating, it's worth having love, you know, doing with love.
Awesome. What are you thinking about marriage? What do you think about marriage?
Um, I love this one. One and done. You know, I tell my students, wife for life. That's it. It's a decision. It could have been made in the most beautiful time of my life, but it's a decision that will be honored in the worst and the most horrible times of my life, because it's a decision made freely, out of love, the ultimate love, because that's when we made the decision. And it's a decision made for life. It's a decision made, a mutual decision that two human beings agree on. So it should be the highest form of agreement, I would say, and the most sacred form of agreement, and the most to be protected form of agreement. I would say you can break out of other agreements in life and not suffer not suffer as big a consequences, or infinite consequences. I believe marriage is that's exactly it, one and done.
I'm like, also, wife for life. That's a new one. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
So, George, what do you think about family?
Um, it's the it's the most natural and the most beautiful expression of two people loving each other, obviously, completely, and trusting each other, and also trusting God. It's ultimately an exercise in trust and in love. And at the end of the day, it's the only form of um it's the closest thing to serving, or the best thing, or the most appropriate form of serving your fellow man. Is first and foremost serving your family, serving those that are around you. And that's where it starts, and that's where it ends. Like I said right at the beginning when we met, I start my day in the house. I end my day in the house. I leave the house to do things, but I come back. So family is ultimately the test, the true test of service, the true test of love, the true test of sacrifice, of purpose. If you're going to make your life count, this is where it counts. If it doesn't count here, it doesn't count anywhere. So this is ultimately my statement. It's what makes life count.
I think that's a good one. I think that's good. That's a good point. That this is where it counts. What do you think
Yeah.
about church? And I got a couple more, and that's it.
Okay. um. Obviously, we're talking post pandemic here. I would say church was vital at every point. Post pandemic, I see it not just vital, but the visible expression of God in this world. Like the way that God, obviously, it's biblical too. He talks in Ephesians about this, all the mysteries and all the riches and all the wonders of God are displayed through the church, in the church, and because God decides to work through the church. So you're not going to interact with God apart from his body, and the way he displays who he is in the most profound and most beautiful way, displays it both to the living and the entities that are in the heavenlies. It says in Ephesians, it's through the church. That's where it displays his glorious wisdom, and everything that's of any value in this universe will be displayed in the church. The whole book of Ephesians is glorious to describe this. It's beautiful.
Awesome. What do you think about purpose?
Mm. I guess it's the motor that should make everybody rise up in the morning, you know? If you don't have a purpose, you will have the most empty, void, worthless, depressed, disappointing life. I think purpose is the antithesis to any of that. It's the correction to any form of anxiety or stress or uselessness or, you know, directionless life. So I think purpose is in and of itself, it's not something to be put on a pedestal, but it's the very fuel that should run your life's motor, if that makes sense, you know? So
Yeah,
whatever God gifts you have, whatever blessings God gave you, opportunities, situations, talents, whatever, without purpose, they're gonna be wasted, you know? Like the dude burying that one talent. He didn't have a purpose. His only purpose was survival. And that's not a purpose in itself. So I think purpose should be it's like the fuel that runs your motor, but it's also the very thing that ties you to some grand, something grand out there. Without purpose, you're not gonna connect to God's plan or God's work.
very nice. No, I think that's well put. Very good. Okay. What do you think about eternity?
Um an unknown an unknown, extremely unbelievable reality that we cannot grasp, unfortunately, at this point. We get bits and pieces of it. We get glimpses. We get phrases. I think it's the only connection we have to eternity, or not the only, one of the only connections we have to eternity is through faith. And that's on purpose, on God's design. We can't touch it, but we have to believe it, It materializes and we start living for it, understand it, and eventually we'll enjoy it fully, but right now we can only do it by faith. And it's something not tangible, something not palpable, something not recognized or understood or even known. It's like I was getting on a plane to America. So it's like I would say America to the mind of a 7-year-old. I could imagine 58 different things that were all wrong and they're all limited and they're all too small for the greatness that America was and the experience I was going to have. So I think eternity is out of grasp for us right now. Uh, Even mentally, we can't comprehend something not ending because we have no experience with that. There's nothing that doesn't end. There's nothing that has zero repercussions that are not negative, that are only positive. So eternity has all that and more. So I can't really, encapsulate it. But that's how I see it. And then this expansive unknown, and I would say unmerited, and then untouchable right now. But it's just as real or more real than anything. But we can only see it by faith or touch it by faith.
Awesome. The grand finale. What do you think about
All right.
Jesus?
Uh, when I was a kid, I related a lot more to others. I
Not sure.
love David.
Yeah.
I love different stories and different things. They're a lot more relatable and a lot more understanding. And Jesus was just a beautiful figure that I had to love, a beautiful, obviously, son, God's son. I knew that. They came and did some wonderful things, and said some wonderful things, and obviously did some things that nobody else could do. And as I'm getting older, and as I got older, I should say, I'm beginning to see he's endless, like the wisdom that he shares and the phrases that he uses, the things that he does and the sequence that he used when he was on earth. The ultimate, obviously, the sacrifice and the very fact that he not only died, but he resurrected, right? If I believe that, I have to believe that also he was raised to the right hand of the Father. And when I'm starting to grasp the very fact, and I got this late in life, like not only did he do all that for me, we all hear that in church all the time, but we probably don't hear that he's still doing things for us. Like he's at the right hand of the Father interceding right now, you know? The idea that he is mindful of me, of little me, that he himself, the greatest of all, right? There's no name above or below or in any time or age before or after that's great. As I'm getting older, I'm getting to see him bigger and stronger and more wise and more than anything. You know, some of the phrases he uses, like I will make all things new, That's like amazing to think that he can create everything. That's powerful. To realize that everything was touched and tainted by sin, that's great. That's horrible. but then he can come with the power to resurrect and to rectify and to fix all things, you know? All things can be made new. And he does that. He has that power. And then the other phrase that stands is like all in all, you know, the fact that he is in everything that he wants to be in and can be in and will be in, that at some point nothing will exist apart from him. That's like the finality of all things. And I just see Jesus as infinite in the sense that he will be all in all at one point, and he will make sure that he will be every knee will bow and everyone will be his, and everything will be under his authority and dominion. So he's definitely much more powerful, stronger, wiser than I ever imagined, even in my craziest imaginations of what Jesus is. Obviously, he came as a person. We have that personal reference, but even his human words understood properly, man, they reveal mysteries and they reveal eternity, you know? So if we know anything of heaven, if we know anything of eternity, anything of goodness, anything of love, anything worthy of anything, it's because of him. It's just crazy. I never thought of it like that. And I didn't want to just say it because people are saying it. I wanted to experience it and believe it. And I'm getting closer to that. And I would say I believe that, but I'm getting more realities added to that or more experiences to that, you know? Um, in other words, deeper understanding of his phrases that seem so banal and so like cliche. And I mean cliche, he never used cliches, but like his statements are so human, but they're not. Like when he says, I am the door. Imagine if somebody saying I'm the door. You're like, okay, dude, you're the door, right? And then I was saying this. Imagine now we
Yeah.
live in a different world, and imagine if that door is now a puerta or a portal, and he says, I am the portal. And now you realize, oh, he was talking, he is the portal to another reality or to the reality, right? So now he takes you through him, you become aware and participating and worthy of something else. So saying I'm the door with our limited mind, we would judge Jesus by saying he's a door. Pathetic. He's saying a lot more than that, and everything he says has the depth that we cannot I have not, obviously will never exhaust, right? But he goes deeper and deeper and deeper. As I grow older, I get more depth and more layers and more, like, understanding of, like, "Oh my gosh, that's what he meant," you know? Or, "That's what he means," or, "I think that's what he means," because it's beyond us with our little mind. Like I said, telling a seven-year-old what America's like is just a small comparison, you know? Telling a mortal being what infinite Christ is, good luck. And yet we can comprehend him, and what we know is good, and what we're gonna know is greater. And he gets bigger the older we get, and he gets stronger the older we get, and he gets more phenomenal the wiser we get, you know? So thank God for that. It's a never exhausting source of wonder.
Amen. Amen. Man, you have a way with words, George. So I think I think you always had this like amazing way of explaining things, connecting the dots, and like starting here and like connecting all these pieces together. That I don't know. It's a gift. So thank God
Oh,
for
thank you.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
So. Well, George, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for the generous time you've given us. I think you've shared some amazing nuggets of wisdom with myself and with the audience, and I think they'll be blessed to listen to this podcast. So,
Thank you, and
so
thank you
thank you.
yeah, thank you for your friendship, Bora.
Same here, George, and I look forward to, like I said, inviting you back and maybe having a maybe open up some more discussions and unpack some more things that we weren't able to do here today, but also maybe help me co-host some other really cool discussions with other people like we discussed in the past. So
I love that.
cool. All right.
Thank you.
To the rest of the audience, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Making Your Life Count. I hope this was a blessing to you. God bless you, and see you next time.